for the Minnesota DAV podcast, and today I'm here with Greg Peterson. And Greg, you're going to talk to us today a little bit about your service and what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so tell us, when did you actually join military?
I was a senior in high school here. It was 1980, and I went to New Ulm High School. And the recruiters came around, the Navy guy came around, and they had these really cool commercials on TV. You could R&R in Bangkok and R&R in San Francisco. And he came to our high school, and I talked to him. He said, well, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd like to fly on airplanes. He said, well, you could become a fireman's mate or a mechanic's mate or these other mates. You work your way up to flying in the Navy. Well, then the Air Force recruiter came, and I asked him the same question. He said, we'll make you a loadmaster. You fly on big jet airplanes all around the world. So that's what I got to be, was a loadmaster. And I left high school. It was a Thursday, May 27th. And I didn't realize until probably that day that 5 months earlier in January, when I had signed the delayed enlistment contract, that I had to go into the service on Monday. So I walked out of high school on Thursday afternoon, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday.
Not even a break, huh?
I was on a jet plane for San Antonio.
I did a little different. I remember I had the entire summer off before I had to report to basic training. But I can already tell you're smarter than I was because, you took advantage of when those recruiters came to the high school and asked a lot of questions and kind of really figured out what you wanted to do.
Well, yeah, I did grow up on a farm, and my father raised hogs and crop farmer as well, corn and beans and stuff. But he wasn't a very good teacher, so I wasn't a farmer candidate to jump into that. And what I really wanted to do after high school, I wanted to be a semi-truck driver.
Oh, okay.
And actually, my Air Force recruiter, when I told him that, he said, "Oh, you can always be a semi-truck driver. Let's get you a little more technical career field." So I went to San Antonio. That's where the Air Force basic training is, Lackland Air Force Base.
Oh, yeah.
I got down there on the 27th of May, and it is hot.
Hot in Texas,
It's very hot. And luckily for the recruits, they have a heat advisory that they fly a black flag or something like that. And then you don't have to participate in anything outdoors. So you'd go into an air-conditioned facility and have your training that way. And I'll have to tell you a quick story. So I thought I was 10 feet tall and bulletproof and all that when I went in the service. Mm-hmm. Well, after about 10 days, I sort of realized that my mom wasn't there, to fix all my meals and take care of things, and these guys were yelling at me. And I didn't think the military was right for me. So I found a way to sneak away, and I made a phone call home and said, if there's anything you can do to get me out of this, do it.
No kidding. Had second thoughts.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, then in a week or so, on a Sunday, they called me and they said, you have a visitor. And went down to where it was, and it was my Air Force recruiter from here in Minnesota. Oh. And my parents had got a hold of him, and he was going to San Antonio anyway for a recruiters conference. So he came and gave me a little pep talk. But then afterwards, I remember that the drill instructors just puzzled. Whose recruiter comes and visits them in basic training? Most people are realizing they may have not gotten the straight story to start with from their recruiter. Uh-huh. So I got that. His name is Hank Sadler, and he was
Hank Sadler was your recruiter?
That's right. He was DAV department commander.
Yeah. That's pretty slick.
Yeah. So after basic training, I went up to Shepherd Air Force Base, which is in Wichita Falls, Texas.
Okay.
I went to a course called Basic Loadmaster School. That's where you learn the basics of weight and balance, understanding carrying passengers. They also put you through what they call the altitude chamber, which is a big steel box that they increase the pressure up to about, 10,000 feet or so. And then they have what's called a rapid decompression. They blow the relief valves, and then you're supposed to figure out how you react in a lesser oxygen environment. For me, I'm a sleepy kind of guy, but for some people, they might become belligerent with lesser oxygen. And that was just a training for you. And we had to do that every 3 years throughout my career. From there, I went to Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington, and that's Air Force Survival School.
Yep.
And by that time, it was already after Thanksgiving. So it's pretty cold up there. And we spent about 3 days out in the field.
And it's wet up there, right? I mean,
It is.
Washington.
And we had to navigate at nighttime using a compass and trying to find fence posts with numbers on them. And we were taught how to make fires with, like only one match or no matches whatsoever. We had to make snares to catch rabbits. And I remember they cracked open a stump and there were a bunch of ants in there. And they said, dig in, boys,
And that's a skill for a lot of people on aircraft. In case they go down somewhere, anywhere on the planet, they got to be able to
exactly. That's
sustain
the
themselves.
purpose of that.
Yeah.
We made all of our sleeping bag was made out of nylon, parachute material, and things like that. We did some vectoring in of helicopters, so if there was a rescue and all that. And then after that, then we were captured by their POW staff, and we were spent 3 days in a mock prisoner of war camp.
Yeah, a little SEER training.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. And I remember, we had to stand up with a hood over my head inside a very short locker, I guess I would call it. Did that for about 12 hours. And there were advisories on how to resist. There were people within our group that were actually instructors, and they would tell you how to resist or how to work with your captors so you're, not really benefiting them. And then at the end, and there was a lot of propaganda, a lot of noise, music, crazy songs played all the time, sleep deprivation, lights were on all the time. And at the very end, of course, we didn't know it was the very end. They had us all standing up, and we were supposed to pledge our allegiance to that country.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we were like giving him the finger and saying, we're not going to do that. And he said, now you will sing the national anthem to my country. And the spotlights came on, and there was a big American flag there.
Yeah.
And we just started crying.
That's a significant, sentimental moment for, those units that actually go through that.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. And, that training, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but, I imagine that training kind of taught you a lesson about yourself and how much you can really endure and how some things that might affect others as a big deal probably just rolls right off your shoulders.
Exactly. And then from there, then I went down to Altus, Oklahoma, and I went to the C-141 Lockheed Starlifter Loadmaster School, and that was about another 8 weeks. And that's where they taught us the specifics of that particular airplane, the formulas for their weight and balance. And then from there, I got my assignment. My permanent assignment was to Charleston, South Carolina, which was a really nice, small, quaint town in 1980.
Yeah, South Carolina is nice.
Yeah. And so I was called an aircraft loadmaster, and I went into the 41st Military Airlift Squadron. And what loadmasters do is, I was awarded wings, so I wore silver wings on my uniform. And I have those wings in my office now. And a lot of people will say, oh, were you a pilot? And I'll say, no, I'm the guy that handed the cup of coffee to the pilot. And that kind of helps them understand that. Even any big airplane that flies today, there's more than just pilots on board. There's flight stewards. Sometimes there's mechanics on board. But what our mission was, we took care of everything in South America and everything from the western edge of Europe, from England, all the way over to about Istanbul, Turkey. And when I say took care of that, whatever the State Department or the departments of the military were shipping freight-wise, we carried it.
Yeah.
So a lot of that was just material for everyday office supplies, things like that. We hauled a lot of helicopter blades for the Navy. They're extremely long. We hauled a lot of passengers, either DOD, people moving to new jobs, or families. A lot of family members would fly a hop, they would call that.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, then I went back to school to become airdrop qualified. So back to Altus for that, then to Fort Benning. So everybody that was going through jump school got to jump out of us. They jumped out of both C-130s, and then our 141 was down there so went through that, and then we learned how to drop big platforms, tanks, deuce and a halves, anything the Army would rig like that.
Right. Yeah, and what's interesting that I myself, I joined the infantry, and then I did some other stuff later. But just hearing you talk, from day one, you're learning a skill that's transferable well after the military. That's going to be a career potentially if you wanted and earn some pretty high pay. I remember going to hazmat school myself in the military and just learning all the different stuff of the, how to load stuff, what's explosive, what's corrosive.
What can't go next to each other.
That's a side note in what loadmasters do on a daily basis. And you guys are running, everything you're doing, I think back in when I was young in the military, and you're always training, you're training for the real thing. But you guys are doing the real mission every day, moving troops, moving equipment. Yeah, so a lot of responsibility there.
We would have missions that went once a month into every embassy in South America. Usually in Europe, the C-130s that were stationed in theater there, they did the embassy runs there, but we would, and all kinds of stuff. We would haul a lot of fresh meats, fresh milk. We would have big refrigerator pallets on board. We'd go to Lima, Peru, Ascension, Paraguay, Rio de Janeiro, capital of Bogota, Colombia, all those. We wouldn't spend a night every night. We'd hit maybe two of them and then spend a night. La Paz, Bolivia. So every one of those places had their own form of trinkets. In La Paz, it was alpaca blankets and stuff. So we always had a lot of different trinkets. In Turkey, we'd bring back brass lamps, and we get these big bags of pistachios, or Turkish rugs or pipes. In Germany, it was beer and butter,
I remember that too. Traveling, you always had to get the trinkets and whatnot. And but yeah, you got to spend some pretty good time in a lot of neat places then.
Yeah, I did. The only place I probably didn't get to would have been Australia. Since I was in Charleston, which was an East Coast base, there were still 3 141 bases on the West Coast. So their mission was to handle the Orient and further west. And then each base also had kind of a special mission. So McGuire Air Force Base up in New Jersey, they hauled the nuclear weapons around. That was what they called Primary Nuclear Air Force, PNAF or something like that. Charleston, our special mission was special operations, working with the Green Berets, the SEAL teams, and things like that. McCord Air Force Base up in Tacoma, their special mission was supporting the Antarctic McMurdo station down there. They airdrop down there, and they land aircraft on the ice.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because you joined in the 80s, and you retired, right? You did over 20 years? Yeah, because I remember lots of, aircraft out of South Carolina that we always used to jump and get transported in, and 141s, jumped a lot of 141s, and may have crossed paths.
Oh, I'm sure we probably did.
Yeah.
I know we were on an exercise down in Florida in, was it 82 or maybe it was 83. And normally when we went into crew rest, we were told, okay, be back at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you were on your own. You didn't have to report to anybody. And a lot of times we'd go sightseeing and things like that. Well, when we got back to our hotel, they said, we have to go. There's but it's not time to go yet. Get your crap and let's go. And we went out to the airport, and they loaded us all on someone else's airplane. We got on board. It was just full of crew members. We went up to Pope Air Force Base. And we were going in on landing. I was looking out. and it was just full of aircraft too, all C-141s and C-130s. From there, we went to the base theater, and we're being briefed on the Grenada invasion.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that next day, then we went and did that for quite a period of time, 2 or 3 weeks. We were probably running shuttles down there and stuff.
Okay.
But when I got back to home station, and then they gave us the Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, then some old timer goes, "You can join the VFW with that." Really? Well, I wanted to be a VFW member because my uncles were always here in New Ulm in the parade, so I went right out at age 22 and joined the VFW.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, Grenada. I had when my first company commander. I remember was a Grenada guy. One of my first teammates in SF was Grenada guy. Lots of Grenada people.
Yeah.
So that was a big operation.
It was.
Doesn't seem to hit the history books, militarily as much as it should. There's been a lot of, operations all over the place.
So, like I said, we hauled what the DOD needed hauled, and I didn't. I think it was before my time, but it was the Jonestown. Maybe massacre is the right word to use. Mm-hmm. Well, the 141s had to go down and bring all the bodies back.
Oh, yeah.
So there were a lot of different times when we were tapped to do things like that. It wasn't a terrible duty, but it had to be done. When the Marine barracks got hit in Beirut,
Yeah.
all those had to come back. There was it was a 727, I think it was. Is that the aircraft? Anyway, there was the 101st Airborne was coming out of the Sinai, and they crashed.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and friends of mine, I might have been running some other mission, but they went over and picked all those guys up.
That was that 130, was it, that went down?
No, that was a commercial jet.
Commercial? Oh.
Bringing them back. Yeah. There was someone from here in Sleepy Eye that was on board that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Things I like to do, like now it's the election times. We hauled presidential limousines. Whenever the president traveled, his limousines went, and his Secret Service went, and his sniper team, and all that stuff.
Yeah, aircraft.
And so we got pretty good duty out of that. We went to some pretty nice places. I was on a trip with, I think it was the first George Bush mission. We went to Paris and Bonn, Germany, and Brussels, and he was there on some G7 summit or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, his limos had to be there, so we would go take them along.
Pretty unique life, experience just in the military, and so met a lot of people, went a lot of places,
right?
Learned some great skills. And so, what'd you do when you got out? When did you get out?
Yeah, I retired in September of 2003, so I had 23 years in. And in my family's planning, estate planning, they gave me the what we call a building site. Mm-hmm. So I had this home in Minnesota to come to. I really didn't have anything lined up for employment. I came back here. I shot letters all over. I was looking for kind of an administrative job. My last job in the Air Force, I got to go back to San Antonio, and I was the assignment manager for all the Air Force loadmasters.
Yeah.
So I was off the airplane. I was wearing a headset. And I was talking to chiefs all around the world, and I was giving them loadmasters. So that whole process, full circle, is that all them kids coming out of basic training, I'm the one looking at where they want to go against where we need people.
Yeah.
And I was sending them to Abilene, Texas, or Little Rock, or Charleston, or whatever. So it really that job got me off the airplane. A lot of my buddies, they flew to their last day, and then they walked out the gate, and now what do I do?
Yeah.
And
that's a good transition, though. I mean, right? You do all this time, you get all this experience. Now you're, senior NCO becomes kind of the admin guy running everything, and it's sets you up for the future.
Yeah. So there were loadmasters and pilots and flight engineers that were savvy enough to get jobs at FedEx and UPS and things like that. For the loadmasters, they don't necessarily fly with the aircraft. Mm-hmm. They get it loaded, and there's a loadmaster on the other end. I have buddies that work for NASA that ship space shuttle parts. I got buddies that work for Boeing that ship the Dreamliner stuff, but they stay back at home, and then there's somebody on the other end take it off. And that's fine because they're not carrying anything that is hazardous or that could possibly be airdropped in the air or jettisoned or things like that. They don't need to be on the airplane. I know I heard in some of your other interviews, what advice would you give someone? And I can tie into that. I came to an event here in New Ulm, and the mayor was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, hey, I'm just out of the service. I'm looking for a job. Can you give me any advice? He said 2 words to me. He said, get involved.
Yeah.
And then he said, join a church, join the Legion, join the DAV, get involved, and you will find work, you will find camaraderie, you will find all kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so I did. Joined this DAV chapter here. And then I worked for a while on a hog farm because I'd come out of that environment. That's what I found. But these hog farms nowadays are gigantic.
Oh, yeah.
Thousands of pigs.
Yeah.
We'd cut their tails off. That's just what you do. You cut tails off and you cut the nuts off. And,
Yeah.
But I was doing hundreds of them a day, and I came home. My hands were just killing me. So I sought something else, and I got hired by the state of Minnesota down the road here at the St. Peter Treatment Center, it's called, or Minnesota Security Hospital. And that was a good job, paid well, good hours, things like that, very secure, good retirement. Mm-hmm. No, I kind of lost myself on what the question was you asked.
Well, just you got out and you've got all this training experience, worldly knowledge, and as some of the other era of veterans we talked to today said, they kind of wanted to come home. They kind of wanted to be back in their around family.
Yeah.
And
that is a big, a powerful draw. I want to come home. I had a guy offer me a job in Washington, D.C. He had been one of my pilots. He started up his own company, training air crew. He trains all the Osprey guys out of the Marines, but he needed somebody to work basically technical orders in Washington. I said, can you make it in Minnesota? And then I could have also worked for the Boeing Corporation training C-17 loadmasters.
Yeah.
But it would have been in Oklahoma. And I really wanted to come home. Had that strong desire.
Yeah. After 20 plus years, I'm with you. I did over 20 myself. And but one of the things we heard throughout this segments today is, be nice. Roll kind of with the punches. I mean, there's going to be ups and downs in life, but be nice to people. Get involved, like you said. Be a part of the community. And, I know what you do now. You work with veterans every day, County Veteran Service Office, and you help provide that to some of the young veterans, the old veterans. You mentioned probably the best thing you could said is get involved. But what advice would you bring to, the younger generation of veterans, but just veterans in general with the work that you do as a CVSO and knowing all the services that are out there for veterans?
Yeah. I'll tell you, when I got out, when I retired, I stuck my head or peered into the County Veteran Service Office here, and they said, Secretary, would you like to? No, I don't need to see him. I'm retired. I know everything. I'm a career guy. I know about everything. Well, then I wound up applying for and getting the Veteran Service Officer job, and was just so blown away at how much I didn't know.
Right.
But I do tell my younger customers to get involved. Other advice is always keep asking the questions. Is there something new? Is there something out there? Don't get wrapped up on what you see on the internet, especially with all those YouTubers on how they're going to get you 100% VA disability. Mm-hmm. Come on in to us, and we can get it to you as well for free.
Yeah, one of the things I tell veterans quite a bit is, veterans are like fried eggs. They're fried eggs, but there's never in the history been one with the exact same story, shape, contents. So it's every veteran's, story and needs and claims, issues are different, slightly different. So that's why you got to talk to us.
We interviewed for an assistant service officer a couple of years ago, and one of my questions is always, what veterans organizations do you belong to, and at what level do you participate? And I think we interviewed about 10, and 9 of them, I saw their eyes all of a sudden. Oh, wow. I didn't realize that was important. the man we hired, Marine Corps League, he's a VFW commander right now in Mankato, American Legion, Toys for Tots. We had to say, slow down. You've more than met our requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just so important. I guess that's the last thing we'll leave it on. We're running out of time today. But, yeah, you know, those organizations that exist, there's so much going on behind the scenes, whether you know, to the veterans that are new into the system, really realize it. When you've been where you and I have, you know, been up at the Capitol year after year, all the benefits that have come and evolved and made, you know, life better.
Yeah.
You know, and it's the guys that came before us too. You know, we walked into a pretty solid footing, if you will, you know, after this 9/11 and Gulf War era that we are. I mean, we had things pretty good, and all those people before us that we talked to today, you know, they didn't have the services we had, but you know, good advice definitely. You know, be nice and realize there's going to be ups and downs, and just roll with it. So, well, we sure appreciate you being on today, Greg, and want to wish you a happy Veterans Day coming up.
Thank you,
and,
Mike.
Any, like I said, last words of wisdom for veterans as you depart?
Well, I would certainly encourage everyone to find a Veterans Day event. You know, Veterans Day is the big day. You're going to have free meals everywhere. You can free breakfast at Hy-Vee. There's going to be Applebee's will always have a free meal. So it's your day to eat the whole day free.
Yeah.
And get involved and talk about your experience in service.
Always helps. Always helps. Well, we sure appreciate it, Greg. And that wraps up another episode of Veterans of the North. And have a great day.